It's always nice at the end of the growing season to kind of look back and see what worked well, what didn't work well, what you're glad you did, what you'll never do again. We always have some of those, both of those, some things that we did really good and some things we say never again, right?
I have a internal list of those that is bigger than your list of things that you like to do. I just keep it to myself.
Okay, thanks. Matt indulges me with all my wishes and desires when it comes to the garden about wanting to try this or try that. And he would do it very simple. He would do just like what Daddy used to do, and that'd be it. And that was good, and it fed us. But I can't resist trying stuff.
Well, I would do some things that are a little different than the way we always did it, but I would keep it along the simplistic lines. But I would try some different stuff, yes.
So what do you think's the best thing we've done this year, thinking about the garden?
The tractor, for sure. Made it a whole lot easier to work that bigger garden, and it makes it so much faster. Not only that, I mean, as far as hauling stuff back and forth down there, it's a whole lot easier. Lifting stuff, taking fertilizer down there, 'cause we have to store it up here, and we used to have to load it on the truck and take it down there and unload it down, and just drive it down there on the tractor in the bucket and just get the bucket or get the tractor close to where I want to be with it, and it's right there where I can just, when I empty one, I can reach and get another bag, that sort of thing.
Handy to carry stuff up here too when we harvest the corn and stuff.
Yeah. Not only, for the garden down there, for the stuff we did up here as far as filling the beds with the compost and the topsoil and all of that.
Made it much
way easier, and all the mulching we've done and fixing the driveway. That was a big investment, but it was a really, really good one, much needed and been needed for years. It's just now we just got to where we can actually do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to me that's the biggest improvement we made this year.
The one you're the most pleased with, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll tell you at the end the two I'm pleased with, I guess.
Well, too, and then that one in turn allowed us to be able to grow the corn down there so much easier, and that was actually getting to grow corn once again was the other one, but it's kind of related to having the tractor. I mean, we can do it without the tractor. It's just a lot easier.
We always did, but the tractor sure made it easier. Right. Yeah. So let's talk about the big garden. So the big success was even having the big garden again, having Pat's big garden. That was a success, something we never dreamed about. Series of events happened, with Steve and Kim wanting to sell their house, and Corey and Austin wanting to buy it to be close to us. And the garden was actually part of the land like that me and Steve and Paul all owned together. But after Daddy died, it was so close to Steve's house, he said he wanted to put, fruit and orchard in it, and nobody minded, that was fine. So, of course, after he'd planted all that stuff, there was, in our mind, never a time that we would use that area again, because we just assumed he would always be there. But then once he was, all that come about, then that gave us the opportunity to use the garden space again. And the fruit trees were nice, but for me and Matt, we'd rather have had the corn.
Right. And the other stuff, the other stuff we grew down there also, and the other stuff in the future we'll grow down there. It's just a better use for us.
For us, right. So that was wonderful to get to use it. And the corn was amazing. It wasn't the best crop of corn that's ever been grew there, not because of anything we did, but because of the weather. We were fighting the weather all summer because of the dryness, and but that was really wonderful, wasn't it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it because it reminded me of past times, and then actually eating the corn was really good. And it wasn't the very best ears of corn we ever grew, but it was plenty good enough.
Oh, it was tasty, yeah,
and
it was delicious.
To be able to go and just pull ears of corn fresh and cook them for supper 30 minutes later is that's just something we think's really important, and we put a lot of value in. So it was really enjoyable for us.
We even ate it for breakfast some, didn't we?
Oh, yeah.
And dinner too,
yeah.
Even for breakfast.
And then we put up a lot of it too, so we've still got it.
One thing we run into this year down there, especially, not so much up here, that we've never had to deal with before was deer. Deer getting in the garden, and they got in Granny's garden. Granny's is not down there at the big garden, but it's kind of adjacent to it, just above it. But Granny's yard is the same as the down there in that area. There's not many people in and out all day. Like up here, we're continuously outside in the yard. Mm-hmm. And so we've not had to deal with that here, but we did have deer damage down there. And I think we found something that really worked. It drives Matt crazy, so I don't know. He may, in the beginning we said, well, next year we'll just have to build a big fence around it. And we might still do that someday. But the little deer alarms, and I can link to those in the description, but those really, once we put them out, we didn't see any more deer around the garden or in Granny's. They really did. They're annoying because of the sounds they make, but that really did work.
The most aggravating, annoying thing that has ever been conceived by man, almost. But I will have to say they worked.
They worked, yeah.
But the problem is they pick up any kind
like
of little movement, and
anything.
those things go off all day long and all night long.
Yeah, in the beginning we said we was only going to put them at night. But then, Granny said, well, it's during the day that Paul's seen the deer. And I said, well, that's true. It is during the day. So we just left them going all the time.
But they did work. I will have to say they worked, even though they're so annoying. They worked, and they're very cheap for what
that,
they did.
Compared to building a big fence.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they work that well, we'll continue using them.
And then another thing we did down there that was really good, that we actually did early in the year, was to cut the trees that needed to be cut. Cut the ones surrounding the garden where the sun, it had just, even before Daddy died, they had begun to shade out the garden. And that's been, in all those years, they even grew larger. So that was a wonderful thing that we managed to get that done. We got all those trees cut.
Yeah, it was a big undertaking and a pretty big expense, but it was well worth it, and it ended up put a lot more sunlight down there, but it also opened up our view here that we never have really put any stock in having a view, because we see the view. We live here, we see the view all the time. But letting the light in and being able to see out is really nice, because you can see where you could not see. But it also put light up here,
even back
on our gardens up here too.
Yeah, just crazy how it changed the whole area. We still live on the north side. We're still not getting the sunshine, because of the nature of the way the sun goes across the sky, not getting a full day of sunshine. But cutting those trees even helped our gardens. We didn't even think about that. That wasn't even something we thought about. So that was good. That was
like
great.
Installing a skylight.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, just an extra light.
Even though the sun's low in the sky now, and it will be all winter, we're still getting the light where we didn't get it, just from the reflection out of the sky, I suppose.
Yeah. So that was great. Now, there was some things down there that we would do different. Of course, we didn't know that it was going to be like a drought summer. So that, and we never watered that garden one time, none of it. We didn't water anything down there. So, if, hopefully by this time next year we will already accomplish this. Even by next spring, we hope to have accomplished is that somehow to have some irrigation down there in case we have another year like this year. Mm-hmm. So that's something. And then we cut all those trees, which was wonderful and helped the sun hit the garden. But we did not didn't think about, well, we did think about it, but we didn't do it.
Run out of time.
The trees along the creek that just shade not the whole garden like the ones that we cut were doing, but they just shade that area.
Shade the back of the garden.
And so those definitely is on Matt's list to get that cut. But that shaded part over there didn't do near as good because it's pretty we just didn't realize how shady it was until summer, full summer got here.
Yeah, it was funny to see the first, those probably 3 rows of corn that was on that back part of the garden all grew at a slant trying to reach the sun. And they never did really make much. But here right shortly we will be cutting those.
And then another thing, we didn't fully utilize the whole garden. One of the things that happened to us, like Matt said, run out of time, is that if you watch all our videos, you'll remember that Granny spent 19 days in the hospital. So during that time, I was gone the whole time, pretty much. Come home to take a bath and sleep in my own bed one night and then go back. And then that left Matt to do everything else, including 2 new babies in our family that their mothers needed help, with this or that. So we got really late start on a lot of stuff, and that hindered us. And another thing that hindered us in that garden was that the potatoes we planted down there, we planted them really late, so they didn't do as good.
They made some, but they just didn't make like what they would have if we'd got them in the ground at the correct time, and hopefully next year that will be remedied.
Yeah, and then it left us kind of struggling just to get everything done, and so there were certain areas of that garden, because we made the decision early on that we wanted to grow the corn only to a certain place and then end the rows. And one of the reasons we even thought about doing that was Steve, my brother, that had the trees. Now we removed the trees, but he also had grapevine and some blackberries, and they just do so good that we hated to remove them, because those are 2 things that we use a lot of. So then we thought, well, what if we just grow the corn rows up to that, and then that would leave those areas on each side of that to grow stuff in. Well, that was great, except we never planted anything. So we should have just planted all of it in corn.
We grew a bunch of ragweed.
We grew a bunch of ragweed. Now, I did plant some watermelons, trying down there to see if watermelons would do any good. They didn't do any good. And then, if you watch our videos, you remember for Mother's Day, Matt put up Corey a little cattle panel, and we put some beans on it. The deer ate them all, and they didn't. I think she got maybe 2 or 3 handfuls of beans, and that was all. So that didn't work like we wanted it to. But since then, Matt's decided we shouldn't have put that there. So he's thinking about taking it down. Now, we could easily take it down and use it somewhere else.
And we will.
Yeah, but you can explain why was the reason you...
Just where it is makes it hard to use the tractor when you're actually either tilling or turning the garden or whatever. It's in the ends of the garden, and that's where you've got to go through to be able to get turned to go back and make another pass, and that's just makes it really hard. So we will have beans down there, to just be in a different configuration next year, something that's easier to maneuver in.
We haven't, of course, we won't decide till the day we do it. That's how we are. But we thought about, Matt did, making one long row of green beans. Now, we'd have to do that the day before that, because we'd want to grow them on the cattle panels. But if we did that and planted them kind of where we had the potatoes, then that would be out of the way of the rest of the garden. I still don't want to move. Steve's grapevine does so good down there. It's so established. So I don't know about that. If we could just grow corn surrounding it or not, we'll have to figure that out. But that might be something that we do.
We can do it that way, and just grow it all the way up around both sides of it.
Yeah.
And then probably grow at least one long row of beans down there, and maybe 1 or 2 rows of potatoes, and then start the corn.
Right. We talked about the potatoes. Our favorite to grow, just our tater, is like a Yukon Gold, so we really love those, and if we got them planted earlier. But then also our sweet potatoes done this first time in we've only planted sweet potatoes twice since we've been gardening, and this year was one of them. We did them in one of the raised beds, and they did so good that made me think, would we want a big long row of them down there? I don't know, though. We'll have to think about that between now and next year and decide, because they did so good up here. Then you think, well, what if you just did some raised beds of them up here and get them that way? So maybe those are some things we're thinking about next year. I guess the main things for that area would be Matt cut the trees, which he's going to get on that, and then the irrigation, figuring that out somehow, and then if we made a place for one long row of beans. And then we talked about a cover crop. I think we've talked ourselves out of that for that garden, because of Matt's got to do the trees, so that's going to be, it's going to be messing everything up down there for that. So we may end up not doing that, and maybe either thinking about compost or just liming it. Or then Matt says, reminded me, it's not the soil down there is pretty good, because it's laid fallow for, other than those trees, which wasn't trees weren't everywhere in the garden, they were just in certain places. So it's laid fallow for
over 10 years.
Or at least almost 10 years. So I don't know what we'll do about that part.
The problem with this whole thing is what's holding all of this up right now is hunting season.
Yeah, Matt's into hunting. hunting season. Him and Papa Tony are in the hunting mode.
I have a one-track mind. I can't think about what I'm doing here, gardening and building and trying to fix when I'm trying to think about hunting.
Yeah.
I can only do one thing at a time.
Which in a way, Matt really enjoys it, of course, so he's been trying to be funny about it. But it really feeds us too, because that's the meat that we eat. So
Right.
so that's another thing, yeah. The only other thing about down there is that we said we wanted a seating area down there. Well, was that for Father's Day or what did I get you for?
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe for Father's Day. I got Matt 2 chairs, I guess we may even be sitting in them.
This is the ones, yes.
And then we were just going to take them down there and sit them like on the edge of the creek somewhere. Well, we never took them because by that point the garden was kind of going, and we didn't find ourselves sitting down there any. So they ended up just sitting up here in our yard. So I don't know whether we'd carry them down there and make a little area or not. Early in the spring is when you'd need that the most. Is when you're down there working a lot. Yep. So I think that's about it for the big garden.
Yeah.
Now, for up here, I guess let's think about it like from the blueberry bushes in the front of our house, where that's our largest gardening area, is up through there. Those lower blueberry bushes didn't do that good this year. Our other ones did really good, best year in a long time for the blueberries. Those down there, though, are our oldest ones, and they just, I don't know if they're dying out or if it just wasn't I don't know. They didn't do as good. And then the next little part's where we usually put our winter squash. And again, we got them planted so late that they just didn't do anything between the lateness of our planting them and then the dry weather. Mm-hmm. So they're done for, and that just wasn't a good year. Last year we had a super year for winter squash, but not this year. And then the next little area is usually where we put some of our spring stuff, and then maybe once that's gone, we like onions and things, then we'll plant some other stuff. So Matt was saying that he wants to, you had some thoughts about that little area.
Which area is that now?
Where the carrots and parsnips and stuff are.
Yeah, I'm thinking about we could just, but now it involves removing some flowers. Mm-hmm. So that's a touchy subject around here. Or in my mind it is. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to be diplomatic.
Yes.
So
I appreciate it.
Take all those flowers out right there and plant our carrots, and if you do parsnips again or whatever, we should also put our okra there too, because it's kind of poor ground, and okra does good in poor ground, and then that would free up the space where the okra is now for maybe more beans or whatever else. Because the way it grows up and gets real tall, it ends up laying over and getting in the way, and if we did it there, it would kind of be out of the way, and we'd just let it do whatever it wants to do.
The flowers Matt's talking about, they for 2 years have basically been abandoned because of the previous year was Miss Cindy being sick, and then this past year was Granny, so not been took care of. And then over the years, what's happened there is there's a couple of the things that thrived the most that have kind of took over. There's a huge plant of bee balm down there, like that's where the bee balm is, and it spreads every year. There's the dew sun drops. Someone told me they were evening primrose, and they just spread like crazy. And phlox, the wild phlox, which is my favorite. But all that could be managed and put back. It needs to be, actually, because over in it there's hostas and stuff that grow that you never even see because the rest of it just overcrowds it. So I'm open to at least reducing that. I have Uncle Woodrow's rose in there.
Oh, yeah,
and I have the one that which we could move it, but I have the one that some dear sweet person sent me for Miss Cindy, sent us for Miss Cindy, but it was so covered up this year you couldn't see it for all the weeds and the stuff, so that definitely needs to be looked at. So Matt's right on that account. We need to look at that one. And so many of you, several people sent me Jing Orange that was the thing with our okra this year. It grew, but we didn't like it as much just because I couldn't lay my hands on it. I still know I have it because we saved our own seed. I just don't know what I did with it. But I couldn't lay my hands on the Jing Orange that we usually grow. Anyway, we grew something else that we didn't like this year, but thank you so much to everyone that sent us some. So I'm well prepared for next year. Wherever we put it, I'll be well prepared. In that same area that goes along our largest area to grow stuff, there's the back in the back, we fight the bank that goes up. In the front, we fight the bank that goes down. So that's a constant battle, is to keep the stuff cut off that bank. Now, we don't try to weed eat it or anything like that, but just to keep the trees, the saplings that grow up through it. And we usually do that every year.
Usually do it every spring, early, like February or first part of March, but we didn't do it this year, and it grew up and it got kind of unruly looking. So
yeah, there's you know how quickly trees will grow. There's like a poplar tree that's taller than I am. It's just I guess it's just come up this summer, you know, or early in the spring and grew all summer. So that's something we need to work on.
Yep.
Matt would like to trim the limbs out of some of the oaks through there too.
That'd be a kind of a pretty big undertaking because they're pretty high. But they do need the shade part of that, and I don't want to cut the trees because they're really nice, pretty white oaks, and I just don't want to cut them. But I would like to limb them a little bit.
You talked about getting a pole saw.
Yeah, and we need one anyway. I need to just look into buying one, and I could use it all over this place. And I could use it in the woods hunting, cutting shooting lanes.
Could do that too.
Yep.
The next part is our largest, I guess, wide and lengthwise up here. The biggest areas where we usually we have the 2 long rows of cattle panels. We put our beans, and we did try something different this year. We broke up the bean. We planted one long thing of rattlesnake beans, and then on the back we planted some different varieties. Like Matt's saying, I like to try too many things, but different varieties of things. And the drought really, I don't know if it was just the exact kind of stage of the rattlesnake beans or something, but they just died out on us. So we pulled them up. Now the ones on the back kept growing. Maybe they were shaded a little bit from that front row in the sun. I don't know why they done better. Anyway, we pulled them out and we replanted them, and we've actually, the ones we replanted, done better than those first ones. We got more
That's
more
what
beans.
we've done about all of our canning off of, is that second planting.
The second one, yeah. So we did try to change up things a little bit there. Matt wants to change it up even more. And I have to agree with him. I was already thinking about it as we go a little bit further on the tomatoes, but that, like he said, planting what'd you tell me? The tried and true, or what'd you say?
Grow what you know.
Grow what you know, yeah.
Right.
Instead of me trying so many different things.
Right.
So that'll be something we think about next year. Now, if we were able to do a big long row of beans down at the big garden, then up here we could still do a rattlesnake and then do the peas or something on the back one, or something like that, or vice versa. So something to think about there. That area, though, Matt touched on it when we were talking about cutting the trees down at the big garden. That's the amazing view. If you stand in that garden and look back across the ridge, I never realized that we just wasn't able to see over there. You know, I can see it at my place in the living room, my perch where I always sit. I can look out the picture window and see over there. But I'm looking through what would you say, between the bottoms of the trees and the leaves and stuff, I guess.
You're higher up.
I'm higher up.
Right.
So when you're outside, I just didn't ever notice all the understory with the laurels and the ivies, and we did have them cut some of those out when they were cutting, and then leave the big oaks that Matt's talking about. So that's one of my favorite things, is just standing there looking out through that view that's been there ever since we lived here. We just didn't know it was there.
Yeah.
Didn't even know I was missing it, I guess. So that's one of my favorite things this year. And then when you get up a little bit just beyond that, the tomatoes, Matt says he didn't even want to put tomatoes there anymore because he just don't think they do any good. We've got 2 rows going the opposite way of cattle panels that we've grown tomatoes on for several years, ever since the cattle panels have been there. And before that, we planted tomatoes there with baskets. So
And we've always struggled.
So maybe we'll do 1 row and not. Or maybe we won't do tomatoes there. Now, my thought, I'd already been thinking, me and Matt hadn't shared this with each other till this morning when we were talking about it, was that I wouldn't try any varieties of tomatoes next year. I would just focus on the Cherokee Purple that Matt loves, the Tommy Toes. Those would be the different varieties, the Black Cherry, the Sun Gold, the Juliet, the Orange and orange one that David and Carolyn. And then down there, I would just try to focus. We really loved the Randy Hooper. I'm calling it the Randy Hooper tomato. We really loved it. We would just plant only those down there. So I guess between now and next year, we'll have to decide what of that we're going to do.
Yep.
Then when you leave that little area and come up to here in the back where we're at, there's 2 banks, and I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago we started in that we wanted to remove all the grass up here and not have to do no mowing and no weed eating. That's not happened, and now I'm not sure we'll ever get to that, but that was before when we wanted to do that was before we had the big garden. Now it's kind of like, well, we've got so much growing space down there. Would we want to get rid of all the grass? I don't know, but Matt sure is tired of mowing it and weed eating it. But anyway, so that's just still up in the air. But on one side and we've got the steps that come up into this area. On one side, well, on both sides we have blueberries, and they did really good this year, so that's a plus. And we even planted some new ones. Corey got me some for Mother's Day, so that's great. I love to have blueberries on both sides, all the way up and down of that, of the steps at least. And then we have our grapes there, and is that all we've got there? The grapes, yeah, growing. And our grapes the ones that were established did really good up here this year too. This was just a year for grapes.
Yeah, they did good.
They did good everywhere, so that was good. So I guess we feel pretty good about that area.
Yeah, it's don't need to fool with it then.
Other than if we could figure out how to keep you from weed eating the banks.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what to do about that,
Yeah.
but I mean, we could plant something there that would, I don't know, like juniper or something maybe, but
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that stuff.
Yeah, so I don't know.
And that's an undertaking, and we'd be a pretty big job to plant all that and to maintain it too, probably.
Right. Then the next kind of 2 beds at the top of the steps, there's a bed on either side that has asparagus in it, and then the one has all asparagus and the other one has asparagus, and then in one end there's not much, and we've been putting potatoes there, and they've done pretty good. But then if we were able to do more potatoes at the big garden, we probably wouldn't need to put them there. So maybe we could put some pepper plants or something. I don't know. The other bed of asparagus, it's been ignored for 2 years too. It just got so weeded, and it's like one year, it seems like I tried to, how do we remember, time goes by so fast, but you remember I even hired one of the neighbor girls to help me one day, and I was determined to, there's some kind of, it's an herb that Corey planted years and years and years ago, and we don't use it for anything, and you can't kill it because it goes by underground runners. And so that's why I paid the neighbor girl to help me, and we worked all day on that bed trying to get it out. And then I kept it pretty good that year. Then Miss Cindy got sick, and then of course Granny was sick, and it's just, I would just this year just avert my eyes so I didn't have to look at it. If I walked by it, I just would not look at it because it was such a mess, and I just left it. I never even done nothing to it all year long. So I hope I can do better on that next year, but I just totally ignored it this year. Another thing we kind of totally ignored too was our blackberries.
Yeah,
I picked blackberries, and I made blackberry jelly and blackberry cobbler and stuff like that, but we didn't keep that bed cleaned out either like we should have.
You make it sound like we're bad gardeners.
We are sometimes. I mean, sometimes life just gets in the way, and that's just all you can do. You know, the amazing thing about a garden, though, is even when it gets like that, you can, lots of times,
it still wants to grow.
It still wants to grow. Now, it may not be the best harvest ever, but a lot of times you can prowl through the weeds that's just totally overtook it and find stuff growing. And that's the amazing part of being a gardener. It's like hunting Easter eggs sometimes if you let it get away from you. And sometimes life happens, and it just does. It gets away from you.
Yeah.
Especially, me and Matt went through that a lot. I mean, you know, in the last 2 years because of our mothers, but even prior to that, when we both worked outside the home, you know, full-time jobs, if on the weekend it was raining or something, or you had commitments and you couldn't do anything, then, you know, in a garden, a week will let it get away from you in the prime growing season, you know. So if you had 2 weekends like that, it just about get away from you for good. We had this was the first year we used the little round metal beds that Matt got me for Christmas, and I wanted to put the hyssop in one, and can't remember what it was I wanted to put the other one in. Something else in the other one. Anyway, we didn't do that. We ended up putting peppers in them. And our peppers this year were a failure from the very beginning, from March, really. They weren't, those that grew, and I'm thankful for them, but it started out, the failure was that I've always started our peppers, and this year it just didn't work. It just, I don't know, I think there's a couple of things I did wrong. Part of it was Granny being sick and all that, but there was, even before that, they were not doing well. And we literally, for the first time in I don't know how many years, did not plant one pepper that we started from seed.
No.
None, not one. Not even one. So we didn't have any of the cayennes that Matt likes. We didn't have, I liked the shishitos and the habanadas, the mild variety. Those are my favorites, and none of those. And then, so I ended up having to buy plants. And I did stumble upon the gypsy peppers at Wayne's Feed Store, and we used to grow them. So we grew them, and they did pretty good for us, and we like them okay. And then I bought the ones from Pat and Betty, the bullhorn, and they've been okay too, but they just wasn't our favorite. And then because they were in those round beds, they struggled with being dry. I mean, they would have struggled in the ground too, just in this summer, you know. But so it wasn't a good year for peppers.
We did keep those watered pretty fair.
We did, yeah.
But
yeah.
Being in the metal beds are kind of like the grow bags. They get hot and they dry faster than
if you were in the ground. Yeah.
And you got to stay ahead of that and keep stuff watered.
So yeah, and so next year I hope that I can do a better job of starting the seeds. I've always done that. It's just this year it just didn't work. Every one died. Most of them died in the house, and the rest of them died out here in the greenhouse when I moved them out here. So that was just a no-go. And I'm not sure if we would put the peppers in those beds again next year either. We'd have to think about that. If we normally we put them with the cucumbers, but we didn't do that this year. I think they would do better over here though, but then again, I think it was mostly that we didn't get to start our own. I mean, that was what hindered us. So then the other beds back here, the Cherokee Purple was good. It's always like one of our dependable things. Matt got to eat lots of tomato sandwiches. They were all all Cherokee Purples in the whole bed this year.
In fact, I may eat one for lunch today because we've got just
a
a little handful in there that we just picked the other day, and it's mighty late in the year to be eating a tomato sandwich for me. So
it is, yeah.
I may do it just for the sake of saying I can eat one this late.
Right, so they did good. There was no complaints there. And no complaints with the Tommy Toes either. They, like usual, produced to the point that we couldn't hardly keep them picked. And so really loved both of those. Those were great. Now, if you watch our videos, you know during the winter, we tried to retrofit, Matt did, the beds back here that were, all the ones back here, other than the metal ones, he's built over the years. We would get wood, Matt would, out of the woods,
Just
logs. And what happens over time is they deteriorate. I mean, they rot away. And Matt's replaced them. But once we redid the roof of the house, we saved the tin. That was Matt's good thinking. He said we could use those for the raised bed. So he did. How many did you do? 3, I think we managed to complete.
Yeah, I think 3.
And they're so nice. And it just turned out so good. And now you just need to do the rest.
Yeah.
We were counting up this morning. I think there's 5 more. Mm-hmm. The 2 that's at the top of the steps. There's 1 in the back of the house.
This little tomato bed right
here. That little tomato bed. Oh, and the blackberry bed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's something hopefully we can work on this winter.
Right.
But it turned out really nice. And I could link to one of those videos if you missed it, showing how Matt did it with the tin and pine. And you remember the name of the technique we used to burn the pine to make it last longer?
No.
I can't think of
Some
it
kind
either.
of Japanese term.
Yeah.
We'll have to look it up.
So I could link to those. One success we had back here this year was where we do usually put our cucumbers. We have, for the last probably 3 years, really, and every year's worse, had a terrible time with squash bugs. Not so much a little bit on our squash and stuff, but mostly on the cucumbers. And so this year, because of a lot of you told me the previous year to try pepper spray. So we did. I can put the recipe that we used in the direction or in the description below. I just found it. I just Googled it, and I truthfully looked for the easiest one I could find because I just didn't think it would work. I'll put that in the description though, but it did work. Now, what I would say is you have to do it at least once a week. And so it's time consuming, but my thought is if you could do that for several years, maybe you could break their little life cycle and they'd be gone. Now they could always come back flying from somewhere else, somebody else's garden. But that was really, I was thrilled with that we really did. It really did work. It really did keep them at bay. We tried other things. Someone told me to put pine. I had pine sticking out everywhere.
Yeah, it was pretty jank looking.
Yeah, and then the nasturtiums grow all around the beds, but somebody said, well, no, Tipper, you have to grow the nasturtiums in the cucumber. So I did that, and I won't do that again because that turned into a mess. And I think they actually shaded out some of they were competing with the cucumbers for the water, which wasn't much this year. But it really did seem to work, didn't it? It's just time consuming to do, to make it and then to actually come out and do it. But I think if you did it once a week, that you could definitely, and maybe even in the beginning, maybe twice a week, you just have to play around with it. And who knows, it may not work for us next year, but it did work this year, so that was a real win. One other thing we changed because of Matt this year was the grow bags.
What do we do?
You didn't want to put tomatoes in them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of lost there.
Yeah.
I didn't. We ain't never done any good with the tomatoes in them bags, and like I said, they stay so dry. And then where they are, it's just hard to get in there and pick them. So I thought potatoes would be a good thing to grow in them because they can you just plant them and just forget about them, and let them grow up and let the vines lay over. And when it's time to dig them, you just pull the vines and dig the potatoes, and that's what we did. And it worked out a whole lot. It's a whole lot simpler and a whole lot better use for those bags for us. And it actually worked really well because it grew a whole lot of potatoes just in those little bags. I didn't think that it would do as well as it did, but they did really good in it.
Is this the second year or third year we've used grow bags for potatoes?
Second, I believe.
But we used more, those that we usually, right here on this side of the greenhouse, usually we would put tomatoes in them, and that was that Matt said it just turns into too much of a jungle, and they don't do no good anyway.
Right.
So that was a good call on that, and I think we'll do that again next year, because like Matt said, you can just put them in there and then kind of forget them. And we didn't water them. No. We really didn't. We water them. And the grow bags do, that's one of the complaints about them is that they dry out. I would say two things. If you get the largest ones, which we have 25, we've got different sizes, but those we put potatoes in, some of them are 30-gallon, that size. That, holds more moisture, of course. And then also, it depends on your climate. Where we're at, even here on the north side of the mountain, a grow bag back here in the back will stay more moist than a bag in the front of the house where the sunshine hits it all the time. So that's something you would have to play around with and consider. I really love the grow bags though. I've got them got my flowers in them. I've got them everywhere, so I'm crazy about them. Matt don't like them as much as I do, but I like them because it's just so simple. You just fill a bag with dirt and grow in it.
I like them really good for the potatoes and stuff, but the stuff
just not the tomatoes didn't do as good. Yeah, but the flowers and the potatoes especially. I really, really like them. But again, it might depend on how much sunshine you get. And normally for us, if it's a normal year and we had plenty of, usually we would get rain at least once a week, if not 2 or 3 times a week. And then this year's just not been like that, of course, at all. But in a normal year, they would stay moist here. Again, we're on the north side of the mountain, so maybe that helps. But that was a good call. And I can see us growing potatoes in grow bags from now on.
Yeah.
Another thing we changed this year was we've had green stalks for 3 years or something like that, and I just decided I just don't think that, and again it's probably where we're located or something, but they just didn't do that good for us. So I was gonna remove one and give it to Corey. We never did get it to Corey yet. And now we have it. We've moved it to the front of the house, and now I've got some fall things like lettuces and greens growing in them. So she won't need them anyway till next year. But with the other one back here, I had strawberries in it. Took the strawberries out and planted them in another raised bed Matt got me for Christmas, and they promptly all died. And we did water them, but it was the dryness and then the transplanting them in the heat and all that. It just wasn't a good time to do it, but I did it anyway. So I would like to put strawberries in that one again early in the spring. Next year, try again. If not, we'll put something else in it. But for the other green stalk, we put nasturtiums and basil and something else. What was it, Matt? And it was another herb, but it come up spotty because of the dryness. And again, we watered those too. We did pretty good about watering stuff back here in the back especially, and they just didn't do good. They come up in spots, but I hope next year I can do that earlier. And someone give me a great suggestion, is that I should put pansies in all those pockets. Now I don't know if I could. I've never started pansies from seed. I could try that. Not pansies, I'm sorry. Pansies would be pretty too, but petunias is what I meant to say, petunias. I've never started them from seed. But that might be something I think about next year. But even if I just do the nasturtiums, I think that would be really beautiful. But I just need to get them started earlier, and then hope we have ample moisture. So the other major thing that we ended up doing this year, we did it back last in the winter, was to actually put gravel down where we're sitting right now in the greenhouse. So it's only took us how many years? 15 years or something to put the gravel down.
Yeah.
It has made it so much nicer in here. So much nicer. And it did get Matt out of that. You didn't have to weed eat in here one time. No mowing, no weed eating in here.
I used to come in here with a weed eater to try to get the weeds knocked down. And then the exhaust from the weed eater would about choke me to death. And I'd turn on the exhaust fan, but it didn't get it out. And I'd run in here and hold my breath and weed eat and then run out.
Yeah. So it's been so
and that's
nice.
kind of ignorant if you think about it. But that's the way we did it.
We did. We should have put gravel down when we first built it, but we didn't. We probably didn't have no money in those days.
That's exactly right.
But it's been so nice to have it. And it's prevented, like Matt said, with the don't have to worry about the mowing. It's just made it easier to walk in and out and not have to worry about the mud, which this year maybe we wouldn't have had no mud because of the rain. We had no rain. But that was really one of the best things we did this year, for sure. And that really the only place left to talk about is the beds on the bank, up there on the bank. And we're still really glad we put them up there. We still have enjoyed them. The sweet potatoes did fantastic up there. The peas did pretty good, both peas. We grew garlic.
Turnips.
We're going to put garlic in them again in another week or so, I hope. What did you say?
Turnips.
Yeah, we had some turnips up there. And then tried some of the new variety of beans. Had some in one of them. They didn't do that good, but again, it was probably the dryness and we didn't water them. And what else did we put up there? Oh, in this bed out here, the one out here that has a trellis in it, we put peas, which did pretty good, the Holstein peas. And then in the other side, though, I planted some of the beans that I got from Debbie at Bryson Farm Supply, and they just never come up. I don't know I can't believe that they were all bad, because they just don't make sense. But then the ones on the other side, the peas all did come up, so I don't know what happened there. And maybe something dug them up and ate them, maybe bird or something got in there, or a squirrel or something. And
maybe a black cat.
Maybe a black cat, yeah. Anyway, but we're still really pleased with those, and we'll continue to use them. I've got our Egyptian walking onion started in one of them. I hope it'll just take that one over. And a dear sweet friend sent me some more bulbs, so I can go up there and just plant the whole thing in them now. So that'll be good. And that lower one, we've still got some like medicinal things in it, even though we didn't use any of it medicinally, but it's there, I guess, if we need it. So, yeah. That's pretty much sums up mine and Matt's gardening year for this year.
Another wrap for the year.
Another wrap for the year, yeah. So if you had to pick what was your favorite, maybe your favorite two things that we did that was a good thing that was accomplished.
Buying a tractor, of course.
Yeah.
And then growing the corn.
Yeah, for you.
Yep.
So if I had to say, I should say corn, but I say the greenhouse floor. It's just made such a difference. And then I would say that view, which was part of the, we did that to grow the corn, but I just go out there and stand, and I'm like, every time I can hear Pap in my head, like what he would say, it's like looking at a different country. It's just like and he wouldn't use country meaning like overseas or something. He used different part of the country, right. Like, he might say, like talking about hanging dog here in our county, down in that part of the country, there's, and say something about the, whether it's the mountains or they might get more snow or something like that down in that part of the country, or like Nantahala up in that part of the country, they get snow when we don't. And it's our country, it's still, part of the United States, even part of our county, but that's just an old way of using that word. Right. So every time I look at that view, I just think, oh, it's like looking at a different country. It's so pretty. So those would be, I think, my two favorite ones. So what's now maybe two things that was not that you disliked the most?
The deer alarms. I disliked listening to them, but they did work.
Yeah.
I ain't never going to say they didn't work, because they did, but they drive me out of my mind.
They don't bother me. I just kind of chuckle when I hear them, but they get on Matt's last nerve.
Them things was going off when I was trying to hunt, like I had to sit in a tree and listen to them, because I wasn't hunting that far from here, and you can hear them things
everywhere.
Yeah.
So, okay, what's your other one?
I don't know. Maybe I think where we put the cabbage. I mean, it's they grew good, and it's a pretty good place, but it's a place that makes it aggravating to work on everything else.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've really got anywhere else to put it unless we put it down in the big garden, but it just kind of, it's aggravation to have it where it is.
Yeah.
And even if we put it in the same place, if we could spread it out and get it a little further away from everything else, it'd probably be fine.
Yeah. Well, if we move the oakery to where you said, then we could scoot it over. Right. So maybe we could do that. For me, the two things I disliked the most, probably the one, and Matt would agree with this even though he didn't say it, it's the one we can't do nothing about, was the dryness, the weather. Can't fight the weather. So that would be definitely that. And then my other one would be, I guess it would be pestilence, when you're fighting the squash bugs, and we have bean bugs, which they wasn't as bad this year, but we have them, and it's just disheartening when you have something eating your stuff, and and you don't want to use, if you're like us, you don't want to use, Daddy put 7 dust on his stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has to make up their own mind what they're do, but me and Matt don't want to do that. So if you don't want to do that, how do you combat them? That's just a struggle of the gardener. So I guess the weather and the pestilence would be mine, which really both of them, there's not much I can do about either one of them. And maybe that's why I feel like that, because it's futile to even try to fight it,
You're going to have to take up both of those with the Lord.
Yeah, have to ask the Lord about that. Ask Him to provide the rain and
kill the bugs.
Yeah. But the Lord did provide a wonderful bounty, even with the bugs and the rain. So,
absolutely. So
we're very, very thankful for that. And we're very thankful for you. If you've made it to the end of this long video, we're very thankful for you, and thankful that you stopped by to help us celebrate Appalachia, and that you really are the reason that we get to live the life that we're living, and we're really, really grateful to you. Okay, what about a thumbnail? Maybe I could do it ain't gonna work. Oh, my elbow's so stiff I can't even hold on to stuff. Maybe I could do
Here's one.
No. Here, maybe like the big plan or something like. Are you smiling?
No. Why do you always ask me if I'm smiling?
Because I know you're not, because I look back at them and you're like,
well, I'm sorry I'm such a disappointment to you.
You're not. Just smile.
I did.
Smile again. All right. That's a wrap.